Review. Book 101's all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is American artist, an author, and constitutional activist. No other than Mr. Julian Raven.
Thank you, Daniel. Good evening, and thank you for having me on.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Julian. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
A little background: I was born in London, England, raised on the Mediterranean in sunny southern Spain in a beautiful town called Marbella. It's one of the hot spots of Europe and the world, actually. It's one of the premier tourist destinations in the world. In the province of Malaga, and even Malaga city now, which used to be an old, ugly commercial industrial port. After the last 10, 15 years, they started accepting cruise liners. They now became the number one tourist destination in the world, and that is Malaga in southern Spain. And that's the province capital of where I live, which is in the town of Marbella in southern Spain. That's where I was raised. And I've lived in New York and the United States for the last over 25 years, in upstate New York for the last maybe 16, 17 years. I actually was in Spain for the last year and a half. I just came back to the States in May. So I was enjoying my hometown for the last season.
Mr. Julian Raven, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And today, let's talk about the Smithsonian illusion, art, power, and the fight for free speech. Can you tell us? Can you tell about this topic?
I can. It is a long, fascinating adventure that I've been on for the last 8 years. It's been going on for that long. My book is Odious and Cerberus, An American Immigrant's Odyssey and His Free Speech Legal War Against Smithsonian Corruption. And I wrote this book a couple of years ago, but it's now come to the forefront again. The news lately was that the President of the United States fired, her name was Kim Sayat, the director of the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. And my book is all about Kim Sayat. The reason why he fired her was that 8 years ago, she rejected a portrait, as you can see in the picture here, of when I came to the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery with a portrait of a then candidate, Trump, who became president. In 2015, I painted it. And it's not this one here. You can see it's a little one under my arm, but the real one is 7 feet by 15 feet. It's enormous. Well, when I approached the Smithsonian Institution to display the portrait for the inauguration of then President-elect Trump in 2017, in January the 20th, which every election that happens, the director of the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery, Kim Sayat, her name is, she called me up and she basically blasted me and my painting because she is a liberal left-wing activist masquerading as a government official in an institution that should be neutral and open to all views and persuasions, which she was not. And so in this conversation that I had with her, where she was very hostile, she phoned me, out of the blue, just called me up after I applied and basically shut down my painting and mocked my painting and my art. And after she did that, I confronted her, challenged her arbitrary and deceitful evaluation of my artwork. I challenged her about one of the issues she brought up, which was false, and she began to basically shout on the phone. And at the end of it, she said, I'm the director of the National Portrait Gallery. Your application will go no further. You can appeal it all you want. Click, and she hangs up the phone. And that's 8 years ago. So and then I sued her in federal court. That lawsuit was going on for years. It went to the Supreme Court. It's a long and fascinating legal journey for an American immigrant like myself to do something like this. But the greatest thing that happened just recently is just 20 days ago, not even that, 25 days ago, the president highlighted her and he said he fired her. Legally, he couldn't fire her because the Smithsonian is a private institution, a private charity, which is part of the illusion. That's the question that you responded to, and I'll get into the details of that. The Board of Regents of the Smithsonian Institution got together. They had a meeting, obviously confronting the situation. And then they said, well, the president can't fire her. Basically, we control all the employees in the Smithsonian Institution, but they're federal employees. And then Kim Sayed resigned the next week, or not even a week, 3 or 4 days later. And my story has been very well documented in the media for the last 10 years, because before the lawsuit, the painting was seen across the country. And it's quite a remarkable part I wrote about in the book. I can't remember the chapter right this second, but I wrote about, it's called Smithsonian Farm, and it was a sort of a play on George Orwell's Animal Farm, how the corruption of the institutions takes place. And I wrote about when Kim Sayed would leave the Smithsonian Institution. And I wrote this obviously 2 years ago now, 2 years ago, I believe, 2.5. And now she's left the Smithsonian Institution. She resigned. And obviously, I'm very glad about that. And that's why, once again, the story is interesting. And what's the most interesting thing for me personally is that the president of the United States had a list of 17 reasons to fire her. And my story and my painting and what she did was number 4 on that list. And so the Washington Post, and, ABC News, and they all picked up the story. And it's been a breath of new life into my journey, my story, and my book, which is ongoing.
Mr. Julian, how did your background as an immigrant shape your understanding of American institutions and justice?
Well, I came here very ignorant, not really knowing anything. I was, I think surprised at every turn. Growing up in Europe, growing up in Spain as an English boy, Europe is predominantly anti-American. There is a lot of anti-American propaganda in the media. In Spain, where I grew up in the south, in the city of Cadiz, there is an American military base. In Rota, there's another military base in Madrid. And so there was a lot of sort of populist or popular anti-American sentiment. I grew up remembering graffiti on the walls and say "Fuera Yankees" or "Get out Yankees." And in the media, and the English comedy was very obviously left wing, and it was always mocking and insulting the United States. That's what I grew up with, that attitude. I didn't want to stay in America when I came. I was coming as a missionary. I've been in ministry for many years. I was actually going to South America. I was going to stay in California, where I went, and then head south to California. To Mexico, and I'm fluent in Spanish, having grown up in Spain, and I was going to go and preach the gospel in Mexico for my life. But God had other plans, and my trajectory was changed, and I ended up staying in the United States, which was the most wonderful thing that happened to me. And yet, the question about the institutions and understanding of the law as I grew, even as a Christian person, and the sharing of my faith and the wonderful laws and protections that the US Constitution affords those people of faith. It's not one faith or whatever. You have freedom of religion. You have freedom to proclaim your faith in public, on the streets, wherever. I was fascinated and enthralled that there were these laws in place that would protect the free expression of one's religious beliefs. So when it came to the free expression of my artistic beliefs, the free speech aspect of the First Amendment, I was familiar with that, having gone through different seasons in my life, especially the freedom of religion. But when it came to the Smithsonian Institution and what happened to me, it was shocking, to be honest with you. It was stunning. I was like traumatized for probably 2 or 3 days after I got that phone call because, I did not expect the director of this National Portrait Gallery to call me. Um, it was I expected maybe I had emailed the secretary and expected a response maybe from the secretary, and an explanation of my application, what I needed to do, if there was something missing, some sort of procedural dialogue. But when she called me out of the blue, it was a shock. I mean, I was like sort of frozen, and then the way that she spoke was so shocking that it was traumatizing to me. And so that set me on this legal journey. And I another remarkable thing about the United States is that a citizen like me can sue the federal government. You can take the United States to court, which I did. I sued them. I didn't hire a lawyer. I was not in a position. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I said, I'm going to sue these people. I mean, this is outrageous what she did. This needs to be dealt with. So I began to learn, study how to file a lawsuit, how to do it yourself. And I basically went to law school by myself for 4 years because I have so much to learn and understand. My lawsuit went all the way to the Supreme Court, all by myself. And that's part of the journey in my book, a remarkable story of how one man in this nation with the remarkable US Constitution that we have can represent himself and redress even the government of the United States when we have been wronged. And so I have been in this tremendous learning season that helps you grow in both your love for your country and appreciation of the law. But it's also a tragedy because as good as the law is only as good as those who defend it or those who enforce it. So if you have corrupt officials or corrupt judges, you can have great law, but it means nothing. And so the other side of my journey is this great adventure, but then the great tragedy of when you get into the Smithsonian Institution and what you had mentioned, the question that you had responded to, which is about the Smithsonian illusion, why it's an illusion. What is the Smithsonian Institution? That's the big question for the American citizen. And I've spent 8 years studying it. I understand it. It's like the back of my hand now. It's something very, very dear to me. And so part of my journey with my book is to educate my fellow Americans just to understand what the Smithsonian is. And do people like me, artists, have constitutionally protected First Amendment free speech rights in the Smithsonian Institution? That's a big question. And right now, my case, even now, I have a case before the Supreme Court of Petition, but the question remains unanswered. They've refused to answer it 3 times. This is the 3rd time. What is the Smithsonian Institution? What is the legal entity status of the Smithsonian Institution? And that might be a question for you. I don't know what you might know about the Smithsonian Institution, but I've been dealing with it now, and I've heard so many incorrect ideas. If you went to my website, Smithson Institution, you will see much copies of newspaper articles from Washington, D.C. from the 1900s. I found all this great history in the archives of the media. And they even wrote about this problem of the misunderstanding of the entity status of the Smithsonian Institution. And because there's this confusion, Daniel, the confusion creates the space for the illusion because nobody knows. And the people that know don't want to say it. And then I'm still able to be abused and mistreated because the law has not been clear yet on what exactly the Smithsonian Institution is.
Do you believe your case reveals a larger systemic issues with the American cultural institutions?
It's hard, I mean, to broad brush all institutions. I think the issue is the human heart. No matter where you go in Spain, I grew up in Spain. Spain is a terribly corrupt country. Spanish life is a beautiful life, but Spaniards are powerless. Their laws, their system, it's so corrupt that Spanish psychology is that they live a dual existence because they're so frustrated with the political system in Spain that they can't do anything about it. They can't, there's nothing they can do. Their legal system, even though they had this new constitution, 1975, I believe, after the death of Franco, and they reinstalled the monarchy, and they they had a constitution that is somewhat of a copy of the American Constitution of the Declaration of Independence, but still the distance between the realities or the ideals of their constitution and the experience of what Spaniards live every day is very different. And so institutions in Spain, the corruption is just part of culture. It's terrible. So in the United States, I'm a person of faith. I've been a minister of the gospel. I've been a preacher for many years. The human heart is wicked and is inclined always towards darkness, towards pride and corruption and wickedness, and everybody trying to step on everybody else. And so America as a system gives so much freedom to people that unless you govern yourself morally and spiritually, America gives you the freedom to be a monster. And so the freedoms that we enjoy in America is a license to people to be wicked, more so because they have greater freedom. And so in institutions where there's power and corruption, you have people there who, unless they are self-regulating, unless they police themselves, unless they are, they abide by a transcendental moral code, something outside of themselves, there's nothing. They do what they want. And so the institutions will collapse if the moral fiber of the nation collapses, which is happening. So it's only a reflection of our faith and values and morals as individuals and as a people. And if we abandon our founding spiritual moral codes, the founders of this country wrote very clearly. John Adams wrote, and I write about it extensively in my book, how the U.S. Constitution is only fit or designed for a moral and religious people. It can only function for those people because it gives so much freedom to people that they are trusting the people to regulate themselves. But once that people becomes immoral, the Constitution is just a license for wickedness. And that's what we're seeing today.
Mr. Julian, as an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Well, with the recent focus and attention to my story and my book, my journey, my primary goal is to bring people to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. That's my primary lifetime objective that governs everything that I do. But as a citizen of the United States, where I'm an immigrant, so I came and I pledged allegiance to the United States, to the US Constitution, to defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic, then my responsibility as a citizen and my story, I didn't look for this situation. I just went to a museum to have a picture showed, and I got slapped so hard. I said, oh, hold on a second. I don't think that's going to fly. That's not going to, be something that we're just going to walk on. I have a responsibility to stand up as a citizen and to correct that situation. So my long-term goal is to see this story through. My current petition, it's an emergency petition for rehearing at the Supreme Court right now. They've had it twice before and they've rejected it. It's the third time, but now it says, President of the United States highlighted this case. You need to answer this question. I will continue to push and push. I started doing these podcasts to talk to people one on one. I don't care. I got to talk to people in educating people to say, we are responsible for the condition of our country. We cannot leave it to the political class. Every American citizen can be involved. You just have to have the will and the desire to help the land in which you live and participate in one. I used to say to people, just pick some problem in your community, whether it's potholes in the streets. Everywhere there are issues that if the people in the community take as an objective to rectify, to fix, to change, to improve, then I think America, once again, because the people are participating, can do it. If we leave it up to the government, the politicians, the president's going to do magic and fix everything, it's rubbish. It's not going to happen. It's up to the values and beliefs in action of the citizens of the United States.
So, Mr. Julian, uh, good luck to your goals. And what are your piece of advice for those people out there want to be an author too?
Well, I believe everybody has a book inside of them. Um, Not everybody has the same level of, intensity in their experience, but everybody has a story to tell. And stories are important because they can impact and change other people's lives. And so, to people who are looking to write, the simplest sort of cliche, just write. Just don't delay. It's so easy to delay. It's so easy as an artist. Sometimes we sit around waiting to be inspired. It's like, just get on with it. Do something. Get the juices flowing. Start writing. And many times, out of that mechanical function, inspiration starts to flow and you begin to be really creative. And so that's the advice: is don't delay, don't hesitate, turn off the television, turn off your phone, get off the internet, hide yourself away and write. When I wrote my book, Daniel, it was bubbling inside me for a long time. I sat down for 2 weeks, morning, noon, and night, and I wrote about 100,000 words without basically obviously stopping to eat and go to bed. But that's all I did. I didn't go, and my wife would say, "What's up?" I said, "I've got to write my book," and I just wrote morning, noon, and night. It was a rough draft. It took me 6 months to edit it and fix it and polish it with an editor and to get it beautiful. But I wrote the book in 2 weeks, and that was under inspiration. That was a life-changing experience for me. You can't make it up. You can't make it happen. You have to be in the right place at the right time. You have to pursue something. You have to learn. You have to study. You have to apply yourself. You have to be diligent. You have to be focused, determined, and unwavering, even with all the challenges and the discouragements and the personal struggles. My book is just my struggle, the discouragement, and each falling down and just getting up and falling down and getting up and falling down. That's all it is. There's nothing new. And yet, if you stick with it, that's where something wonderful comes about.
And to wrap up our discussion for today, Mr. Julian, if you could speak directly to those responsible for the corruption you exposed, what would you say to them now?
Well, they know, they really do know. And honest people should repent. Honest people should say, we really done wrong here. We really wronged this guy. And we really allowed this to go on for a long time. We didn't do anything about it. And we need to make right. We need to restore to him what was taken by this woman. And so, I believe in that, when until repentance and restitution happens to people that have been wronged, you stay like a wounded victim. So they are responsible. Now the leadership are. But I'm going to keep litigating against them until, if they don't do it voluntarily, I believe one day the courts will force them to do it. I hope. But you know what the irony is, Daniel? Guess what?
What, Mister?
The chancellor of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., you know who he is?
Who?
John Roberts, who is the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. It's the same guy.
Okay, Mr. Julian, thank you for your insight. And can you please invite our listeners to support your book itself, your advocacy, or any projects that you're doing right now?
Absolutely. Odious and Cerberus, an American immigrant's odyssey and his free speech legal war against Smithsonian corruption.
More to come, people. See you soon.